Inside your pocket might be a rare Washington quarter worth a fortune. From silver coins minted before 1965 to the 1976 bicentennial editions and rare mint errors, collectors are paying big money. Watch till the end to see if you own one of these valuable coins. The 1967 Washington quarter is one of those coins that, on the surface, seems ordinary and unremarkable. It's a coin that passed through millions of hands, spent on morning coffee, tossed into jars, dropped into vending machines, and forgotten in drawers. But among those billions of quarters minted that year, a small number stand apart, coins that tell a completely different story. Some of them were struck with rare and dramatic minting errors that transformed them from simple change into extraordinary collector's items, each worth thousands, and in the finest cases, up to $146,750. The year 1967 holds a unique place in U.S. coinage history. America was still recovering from the massive coin shortage of the early 1960s, when silver prices had surged and people began hoarding coins. In 1965, the U.S. Mint made a historic change. It removed silver from the dime and quarter, switching to a clad composition of copper and nickel. This change affected the look, feel, and sound of every coin in circulation. By 1967, the Mint was still fine-tuning this new process, and that led to some of the most fascinating minting errors ever recorded. There were no mint marks on coins from 1965 to 1967. The government temporarily removed them to discourage collectors from hoarding coins during the transition period. That means no D for Denver or S for San Francisco. Every 1967 quarter appears plain, with just the date and no mint mark beneath Washington's portrait. But even without a mint mark, this coin managed to carve its own legacy through a series of rare, accidental errors that became legends in numismatic circles. The standard 1967 quarter was composed of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core. Each coin weighed 5.67 grams and featured the familiar portrait of George Washington designed by John Flanagan on the obverse, and the majestic eagle on the reverse. The design itself had already been in use for over 30 years by that time. But what sets 1967 apart are the mistakes, minting anomalies that turned common coins into treasures. One of the most talked about errors from this year is the 1967 quarter struck on a silver planchet. Somehow, a leftover 90% silver blank from the earlier production years, possibly a planchet intended for a 1964 quarter, found its way into the minting machinery and was struck with the 1967 dies. These coins look slightly different, with a brighter sheen and a distinct ring sound when dropped. Their weight, 6.25 grams, gives them away immediately to experienced collectors. Because of how few exist, these pieces are highly coveted, and one in pristine condition has fetched upwards of $61,530 at auction. Another major rarity is the 1967 quarter struck on a nickel planchet, meaning it was accidentally struck on the smaller blank used for a 5-cent coin. These errors result in undersized quarters missing portions of the design, often with flat rims and missing letters. Similarly, there are examples struck on cent planchets, dime planchets, and even foreign coin planchets that were present in the minting facility at the time. Each of these represents a once-in-a-generation minting anomaly. Collectors also look for off-center strikes, where the design is noticeably misaligned, sometimes by 10%, 20%, or even 50%. The more dramatic the off-center strike while still showing a complete date, the higher the value. Perfectly preserved off-center 1967 quarters have sold for thousands. And then there are double strikes, where the coin was struck twice, leaving overlapping designs, Washington's face doubled, or the eagle's wings appearing ghost-like. These errors, when found on a 1967 quarter, are among the most striking visual examples of minting mistakes. Another variety that fascinates collectors is the broad strike error, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal within the proper diameter. The result is a coin that appears stretched out, often with a wider rim and distorted lettering. The absence of a reeded edge, the fine grooves on the coin's edge, is a giveaway. Even more visually captivating are clipped planchet errors, where part of the coin is missing, leaving a crescent-shaped cut that occurred before the blank was even struck. These aren't the kind of errors you notice at a quick glance. Sometimes the difference is only visible under magnification, a doubled letter, a raised line from a die crack, or a small misalignment in the rim. But for collectors, those little details make all the difference. The condition of the coin plays an equally important role in determining its value. Most 1967 quarters you'll find in circulation today are worn, dull, and worth only face value. But those rare examples preserved in mint state condition, with crisp details, no scratches, and original luster, are in another league entirely. Coins graded MS66, MS67, or higher can bring astonishing sums, especially when they feature one of the aforementioned errors. Take, for instance, one of the highest graded 1967 quarters struck on a wrong planchet, preserved in near-perfect condition. That coin sold for an astounding $146,750, setting a record that stunned even seasoned collectors. The combination of a rare composition, flawless surfaces, and strong strike made it a one-of-a-kind piece. The irony is that it started life as just another ordinary quarter, struck and released during one of the mint's most chaotic production periods. What makes the 1967 quarter particularly interesting to collectors is its transitional context. It sits right between the silver era and the modern-clad coinage period, making it a symbolic piece of U.S. monetary history. The errors from this year offer a glimpse into that turbulent shift, a time when the mint was adapting its processes, testing new materials, and pushing machinery to its limits. Every error coin from 1967 is like a small accident that captures that moment in time. The story doesn't end at minting. The journey of these coins adds to their mystique. Many were discovered years or even decades after they were struck, found in old coin rolls, estate collections, or coin jars that families had kept untouched since the 1960s. It's entirely possible that more of these rare pieces remain out there, waiting to be discovered by someone paying just a little more attention to the coins in their change. For those who actively search for them, it's all about the details. A simple kitchen scale can help identify a wrong planchet strike, since the weight will differ slightly from a standard quarter. A good magnifying glass or loupe can reveal doubling, cracks, or odd shapes along the rim. Collectors know that patience and observation are key. You might go through hundreds or thousands of quarters before spotting something unusual, but when you do, the reward can be immense. The 1967 quarter also teaches an important lesson about modern coinage. Even in an age of mass production, human oversight and mechanical limitations can produce beautiful accidents. Each of these error coins is essentially a work of unintended art, a frozen moment of imperfection that somehow survived in a world designed for uniformity. In the coin collecting community, there's a saying that goes, "Perfection is boring, errors are valuable." The 1967 quarter embodies that perfectly. Its value doesn't come from shining silver or a commemorative design, but from the unpredictable quirks of the minting process itself. It's a reminder that rarity can arise not from intention, but from accident, and that those accidents can transform a 25-cent coin into a piece of numismatic legend. Even after all these years, the allure of the 1967 quarter continues to grow. Collectors still talk about the major auction results, about the record-setting sale of the error that brought $146,750, and about the incredible $61,530 example that stunned everyone when it surfaced after decades in private hands. These numbers are not just about money. They're about fascination, history, and the human love for discovery. So the next time you come across a handful of quarters, maybe from your car's cup holder or a coin jar you haven't touched in years, take a moment to look closely. Because while most of them will be ordinary, a few might not be. Somewhere among those millions of 1967 quarters, another hidden error might still be out there, waiting to be found. And who knows? The next person to notice something just slightly different might be holding a coin worth far more than anyone ever expected. A small piece of metal carrying a story worth $61,530 to $146,750. In 1982, the United States Mint faced one of the most complicated years in modern coinage history. It was a time of transition, experimentation, and unexpected surprises. The economy was struggling, inflation was high, and even the smallest changes in metal prices were affecting how coins were made. That same year, something remarkable happened. A coin was struck that would later become one of the most fascinating and valuable errors in the entire Washington Quarter series. The 1982 Washington Quarter, a coin most people would have never looked twice at, turned out to be a hidden masterpiece of minting mishap. To understand why this particular year produced such an extraordinary coin, you have to go back to what was happening at the mint during the early 1980s. For decades, Washington quarters were struck using a copper-nickel-clad composition, a pure copper core sandwiched between two layers of nickel. This metal mix gave the quarter its familiar silver color, even though it contained no real silver. But in 1982, budget constraints and policy changes led to a major decision. The mint would not produce any proof or uncirculated coin sets for collectors that year. This meant that all coins struck in 1982 were meant strictly for circulation. No special issues, no collector packaging, no exceptions. That decision created the perfect conditions for an unexpected minting error to slip through unnoticed. The error in question is known among collectors as the 1982 Washington quarter struck on a planchet meant for another denomination, most famously a 1982 quarter struck on a 5-cent nickel planchet or a planchet of the wrong metal composition. Essentially, the coin was struck using a blank piece of metal that was never meant to become a quarter. Imagine a smaller, thinner, or differently colored metal disc accidentally fed into the coining press where quarters were being struck. The dies pressed the full Washington design onto it, but the result was slightly off in size, weight, and color. At first glance, it still looked like a quarter, but to an experienced eye, something didn't add up. When such an error happens, the coin often weighs less or more than a standard quarter. A normal 1982 Washington quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. The error coins, depending on the wrong planchet they were struck on, can weigh noticeably less, around 5.0 grams, or even more if the metal composition differed. The edge might appear smooth instead of reeded, the color slightly different, and the diameter just a hair smaller. All of these details are clues that tell collectors they're holding something very rare and very special. Because the mint didn't release collector sets in 1982, nearly all surviving examples of this error were found in circulation. That means most were discovered by chance. Someone spending change, a cashier counting coins, or a collector checking bank rolls. The odds of finding one are incredibly low. Think of the billions of quarters produced that year, and only a handful with this unique minting mistake. Yet those few have become some of the most prized possessions in the modern numismatic world. The design itself is the same familiar one that's been on U.S. quarters since 1932, the portrait of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan, with the eagle perched on a bundle of arrows on the reverse. It's a simple, balanced design, one that represents strength and heritage. But when that design appears on the wrong metal, it becomes something else entirely. A blend of history, accident, and rarity. Collectors often point out that 1982 also marked another subtle but important change in the Washington quarter series. This was one of the first years when no mint marks were included on certain coins from Philadelphia. In fact, the 1982 P was the first quarter to carry the P mint mark in history, distinguishing Philadelphia's output from other mints. This small detail already made 1982 quarters noteworthy, but the discovery of a major mint error added a whole new level of intrigue. Most of these rare 1982 error quarters were discovered years later, after being spent countless times. Many show signs of circulation, scratches, dullness, and worn edges, but even with wear, they remain extremely valuable. The true gems, however, are those that were pulled early, saved by keen-eyed collectors, and preserved in mint state condition. When sent to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, these coins often receive special designations such as struck on wrong planchet or off-metal error. The beauty of this particular coin lies in its dual nature. On one hand, it's an everyday object, a piece of change that could easily pass through a vending machine without anyone noticing. On the other, it's a numismatic marvel, a once-in-a-generation minting mistake that shouldn't exist. It's a reminder that even the most standardized, mechanized processes can still produce miracles of chance. When these coins first appeared on the collector market, they caused a quiet sensation. Error collectors, who specialize in minting anomalies, quickly recognized their significance. Prices began to climb as word spread, and the market for 1982 error quarters exploded. Today, depending on the exact nature of the error, the coin's grade, and its preservation, a single example can sell for an astonishing amount. In recent years, verified 1982 Washington quarters struck on wrong planchets have sold at major auctions for between $51,220 and $129,900. To think. A coin worth 25 cents when it was made, now valued at over $100,000. It's an unbelievable transformation. But that's the power of rarity and condition. Only a handful of known specimens exist at such high grades, and collectors will pay extraordinary sums for perfection. These prices are not speculative. They are real auction results, recorded in numismatic databases and major coin sales archives. It's not just the monetary value that fascinates people. It's the story. Each of these coins represents a specific moment at the mint, a day when a blank meant for another denomination somehow ended up under the quarter press. Maybe it happened because of a jam in the machinery, or a mix-up in the feed hoppers, or even a miscommunication between minting departments. Whatever the cause, the result was a tiny metal mistake that slipped into circulation unnoticed, only to become a legend decades later. For collectors, finding one is the dream. They check every 1982 quarter they come across, weighing it, examining its color, and looking for that subtle difference that might reveal the truth. The wrong planchet errors often have a duller or more golden tone compared to the usual silvery luster of regular quarters. The sound they make when dropped is slightly different, too, a muted ring instead of the sharp ping of nickel-clad coins. These small signs are enough to send a shiver of excitement down any collector's spine. The legacy of the 1982 Washington quarter error goes beyond its rarity. It symbolizes a time of change for American coinage, a year when the mint was stretched to its limits, trying to adapt to economic pressures and evolving technology. It also shows how small oversights in a massive system can produce artifacts that tell a much deeper story. Every time one of these coins is sold at auction, it rekindles that sense of wonder. People realize that history doesn't always reveal itself in monuments or ancient relics. Sometimes it hides in the most ordinary things, like a quarter in your pocket. The person who finds it might not be a professional collector or even someone who cares about coins. But the moment they notice something different, something off about its weight or color, the moment they start to question what they're holding, that's when discovery happens. For those who love numismatics, the 1982 Washington quarter error represents the perfect combination of mystery, rarity, and beauty. It's proof that even a coin minted in massive quantities can yield surprises. The value of these coins continues to rise as more collectors enter the market and fewer pristine examples remain available. The most recent auctions have reaffirmed their place among the elite of modern U.S. coin errors, commanding prices that rival rare gold pieces. It's easy to forget that coins are pieces of art as much as they are currency. The Washington quarter design has graced American pockets for over 90 years, yet every once in a while, something like the 1982 error reminds us that even art can be born from imperfection. That's what makes collecting so deeply human, the connection to detail, history, and chance. So if you ever come across a 1982 quarter, take a closer look. Weigh it if you can, examine the edge and notice the texture. What might look like an ordinary piece of pocket change could be something far greater, a one-in-a-million mistake from the mint, a story frozen in metal. Because hidden among the billions of quarters minted that year, a few were destined to be legends, and some of them have already proven it by selling for as much as $51,220 to $129,900. That's the magic of numismatics. A world where even the smallest error can make history, and a single quarter can remind us that extraordinary things are often found in the most ordinary places. The 1978 Washington quarter might look like any other coin from your pocket change, the same silver-colored piece that has been part of American currency for decades. But within that familiar design lies one of the most fascinating modern minting mistakes in U.S. coin history. The 1978 Washington quarter error coins have become legends among collectors, quietly turning an ordinary 25-cent piece into a rare and highly sought-after treasure. These coins are not just collectible because of age or nostalgia, but because of the incredible error that transformed them into masterpieces of rarity, with some examples reaching astonishing auction prices between $54,550 and $132,250. The story begins with how the Washington quarter was originally designed and produced. First issued in 1932 to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington, the design by John Flanagan has remained a classic icon of American coinage. On the obverse, The bold portrait of Washington faces left, with the word liberty inscribed above and in God we trust on the left side of his neck. On the reverse, a majestic bald eagle spreads its wings, clutching a bundle of arrows, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America and E Pluribus Unum, with $quarter at the bottom. It's a design known to every American, simple, elegant, and enduring to be why 1978. The Washington quarter was still being struck in large quantities, but the composition had changed dramatically since the silver era. In 1965, the mint had transitioned to a copper-nickel-clad composition, a copper core sandwiched between layers of nickel, due to the rising cost of silver. The 1978 quarters were struck in this clad metal, giving them that familiar silvery appearance without a single trace of silver content. Over 1.6 billion quarters were minted that year between Philadelphia and Denver, making it one of the most common modern coin issues. But despite that enormous mintage, a few coins slipped through the cracks of perfection, and those mistakes are what drive collectors wild today. Among the 1978 quarters, the most famous and valuable examples are the error coins, pieces struck on the wrong planchet, double strikes, and off-center strikes. One of the most remarkable errors discovered involves a 1978 Washington quarter struck on a 40% silver planchet intended for an Eisenhower dollar or a silver bicentennial coin. How such a planchet found its way into the presses that year remains a mystery, but the result was astonishing. A few of these quarters, with their heavier weight and distinct silver ring when dropped, were identified by keen-eyed collectors. These wrong metal errors are extraordinarily rare, and when authenticated and graded, they can bring extraordinary prices at auction. Another known variation involves the 1978 quarter being struck on a nickel planchet, meaning the blank intended for a 5-cent coin was accidentally fed into the quarter press. This results in a smaller, thinner coin missing its reeded edges and showing an incomplete design. Errors like this are so unusual that collectors pay thousands just for the curiosity value. But the top-tier specimens, with strong strikes, uncirculated surfaces, and impeccable mint state preservation, have reached record prices. At auctions, some of these rare planchet and double strike errors have sold for between $54,550 and $132,250, depending on condition and certification. To appreciate how such value is possible, you have to understand the level of precision expected at the U.S. Mint. Every die is carefully crafted, every planchet inspected, every press monitored for consistency. Yet, no system is perfect. Even in the late 1970s, with advanced machinery and quality control, small mistakes could occur, and when billions of coins are struck, even a handful of errors can escape unnoticed. These few that survive are like time capsules of imperfection, carrying within them a story of the mint's human side, proof that even in precision, mistakes can become masterpieces. The 1978 Washington quarter also appears in several notable double die varieties. These are coins where the design elements, such as the lettering or parts of Washington's portrait, appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment between the working die and the hub during production. On some examples, you can see a faint but distinct doubling on the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," or even on the date itself. Such doubling is subtle but clearly visible under magnification, and collectors prize these variations because they give each coin a unique character. The stronger and more visible the doubling, the more desirable the coin becomes. Another fascinating error involves the off-center strike, where the coin design is not properly centered on the planchet. In some 1978 quarters, you might see a noticeable blank crescent on one side of the coin while the rest of the design is pushed toward the opposite edge. The degree of the off-center strike determines its rarity and value. Coins that are 5% off-center are interesting, but those 40% or more off-center, yet still showing the full date and mint mark, can sell for thousands. When such an off-center coin is also uncirculated, its appeal multiplies. Collectors are drawn to these coins not only for their rarity but also for the visual intrigue they carry. Each error tells a different story, one about how something so meticulously controlled could still go delightfully wrong. For serious numismatists, owning a mint error is like owning a fingerprint of the minting process. No two are ever exactly the same. As with most valuable coins, condition plays a crucial role. A circulated 1978 quarter, even with an error, might sell for a modest premium, but a flawless mint state example, certified by PCGS or NGC, can command staggering prices. Coins graded MS-66 or MS-67 are exceptional, but those reaching the near-perfect MS-68 level are exceedingly rare. The surfaces must be clean, the luster full, and the strike sharp. A 1978 quarter error in MS-68 condition, especially one struck on a wrong planchet or with a significant double strike, could easily reach the upper end of that range, approaching $132,250 in value. One of the most thrilling aspects of the 1978 Washington quarter story is that these coins are still occasionally found in collections, drawers, and inherited boxes of old change. Because the year isn't ancient and the coin design looks so familiar, most people overlook them completely. It's possible that valuable error coins are still hiding among common quarters, waiting for someone to notice the telltale signs. Unusual color, slightly different weight, missing edge reading, or doubled lettering. That's the excitement of modern coin hunting. The possibility that something extraordinary might be hiding in plain sight. It's worth noting that not all anomalies are genuine errors. Some coins appear odd due to post-mint damage, scratches, press flattening, or exposure to chemicals. But genuine mint errors show specific characteristics that match known production mistakes, and professional grading is the best way to confirm authenticity. A certified label that reads 1978 Washington quarter struck on wrong planchet or double strike off-center transforms an ordinary-looking coin into a piece of numismatic history. The historical context of the 1978 quarter adds another layer of charm. The late 1970s were a transitional period for the U.S. economy, with inflation, changing metals, and new minting technologies shaping the currency. Each coin from that era is a reflection of American resilience and change. When you hold one of these quarters, especially a rare error example, you're holding a tangible link to that time. What makes the 1978 Washington quarter error coin so fascinating is not just their rarity, but the quiet beauty of imperfection. A tiny shift in a die, a misplaced planchet, or an accidental overlap of strikes turned a coin worth 25 cents into one worth thousands. And in some extraordinary cases, those rare survivors have reached record prices of between $54,550 and $132,250, proving once again that even the smallest slip of the mint can create an enduring legacy. That in the world of coin collecting, stories like this continue to inspire curiosity and passion. They remind us that even in something as ordinary as a quarter, there's room for mystery, history, and wonder. The 1978 Washington quarter error is a perfect example of that. A coin that bridges the gap between everyday life and hidden treasure. So the next time a worn old quarter passes through your hands, take a closer look. Because sometimes perfection hides in flaws, and a mistake made over 40 years ago might just turn out to be a fortune in disguise.